welcome to episode number 24 of the Star Bros podcast. I'm joined by my giggly bro host, Ben Skywalker.
I'm joined by my bro host, Jan Solo.
Tell us why you're laughing.
Why am I laughing, everybody? Well, listeners, unfortunately, you do not have my eyes at this moment, so you did not get to see the glorious hand movements and gestures that Jan just made as he introduced this episode. It was fantastic and caught me off guard.
I'm just trying to bring some energy to the opening of the show. I know a lot of people
feel it, man. It's alive.
You feel it? I'm thinking about like the entrances that Robert Downey Jr.'s made when he goes to Comic-Con and just sort of gestures wildly and the crowd goes wild.
He starts like blowing kisses and stuff like that too. He's just such a...
Somebody hands him flowers, he throws them back and people go nuts over fighting over the flowers. Yeah.
He revels in the moment.
He does.
How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. It is, we're right on the cusp of a holiday weekend. So we're going to get a long weekend, which means extra Star Wars time. If that's your thing, that's my thing.
It's mine.
I don't know if you have any cool plans. Are you going to do any barbecuing or hit a pool somewhere, anything like that?
Not barbecuing yet. We still need to get a barbecue. We had one last year and we decided to throw it. It was just one of those little mini ones, and it was just getting old, so we threw it away.
Charcoal?
No, gas.
Okay.
I've done charcoal before, but it's just too much maintenance.
It's a lot of maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. You got to keep going out and buying those briquettes.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I haven't really enjoyed, and like every single time I want to flip a knob and just be able to start cooking.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm in the 21st century. No, we're not going to do a barbecue. We might go to the shore. We talked about doing that. By the way, if you aren't from around here, the beach or the ocean, we call the shore in Pennsylvania, just so that'll come out occasionally. Sometimes you'll hear little things like that, and that's why I said that.
And we also say...
John?
We say John, and we also say down the shore.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Down the shore.
It doesn't matter what direction you're coming from.
Did I say down the shore?
I don't think you said down the shore.
I said to the shore.
You said to the shore.
I'm not a Philadelphian at heart. Maybe that's why.
But a lot of people around here do say down the shore.
Which I like.
I like it too.
Just unique ways to say things. Like Lancaster. It's not Lancaster.
Right.
I learned that doing sales in Lancaster. I was knocking on doors and they're like, we know you're not from around here because you keep calling it Lancaster. I immediately started calling it Lancaster and people started listening to me more.
Interesting.
It was pretty crazy.
I just learned something the other day. I learned the origin of a word that is not all that common around here, but is common down the shore. So do you know that the people down the shore have a term for people from the Philadelphia area?
Not surprised. I mean, we visited a lot, and so they probably think many things about us. Yes. Right?
Yes. So apparently they refer to us as shoobies.
That's a made-up word.
Everything's a made-up word, but shoobie apparently comes from back in like the 1920s and 30s. People from the Philly area would take the train down to the beach or down the shore, and they'd bring their lunch and a snack in a shoebox. And so you'd be able to tell who was from Philadelphia because they'd be walking around with a shoebox under their arm with some snacks in it.
Enough people did that?
I don't know.
For it to catch on?
This is before igloos, the igloo thermoses and all that cool stuff.
Yetis.
It's before people
Or as our work just got us Arctics, which is like knockoff Yetis. Like Yeti, that's a popular one. What's something like that we get? Arctic.
Yeti with 2 T's.
And let's take the A off of it so people won't really know. They'll think it's an acronym.
I was trying to figure out what that meant.
Yeah, me too. Until I pronounced it was like Arctic. Oh, there it is. But it's not Arctic. It's Arctic.
I love knockoff brands.
It's great. It works so far. I've tested it out. It's working. So
nice.
Anyway, moving on from that. What were we talking about?
The
shore. Are you going down the shore this weekend? What are you doing?
No, we're not going down the shore. We're just going to hang out. We're going to stay around here, and maybe we will barbecue. I haven't taken the top of the grill off yet. You know, the tarp that's over it. That's been on there all winter, so I'm scared to see what types of spiders and whatever else I'll find in there.
Just turn the heat up, and they'll go scattering.
It'll just take care of itself.
That's cruel. I shouldn't have said that on air. My bad.
It's all right.
How about we talk some Star Wars?
Yes, let's do that.
Because there's actually a lot of Star Wars to talk about this week. So
there is.
Let's start with news from across the galaxy.
Pew, pew.
You got the hand motions in this time for that too.
I'm gesturing wildly again. I'm bringing the energy.
there's a lot of news.
There's a ton of stuff.
There was a ton of things happening in this the last 2 weeks. It feels like forever since we recorded, and maybe that's part of the reason why there's so much to cover. But we got a lot. I mean, some of it's really small. Some of it's just like little things that came out which are interesting. Like there were some interviews with J.J. Abrams this past week, and then another one, both by Collider actually, with J.J. Abrams and Kelly Marie Tran. The latter one I think was on their Ladies' Night segment that they do on YouTube, but learned some really interesting things from both some very, I'll call it politically correct way of stating things, like
such as.
So JJ was asked a couple of questions about the trilogy that he was responsible starting and ending, the bookends of both of those, and he talked about how it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think to be able to take over these franchises and try to create, because he's done it with Star Trek now and now Star Wars too, and the expectations are always high. Like you're never going to please everybody. It's just really difficult. I'm like, yeah, nobody can relate to that better than JJ, I would imagine.
I would imagine.
Then he talked a little bit about planning and whether or not the sequel trilogy suffered from a lack of planning. And again, very politically correct statement. I think he kind of came out and said, yeah, in a way it did suffer from that, but it's also, he backtracked a bit at the end and said it's also, it's tough because sometimes things suffer because the plan is too robust and too difficult and is not malleable enough, and you're not willing to compromise or change from your original plan. That can be an issue. And then there's an issue of not planning, and sometimes it's bad because you didn't plan. And
yeah, and two responses to that. So I like the approach of not over planning. Years ago, somebody told me with my career that if you have a concrete plan in place and it's like a 5-year plan, you stick to it and you get exactly where you want it to go, odds are you miss some cool opportunities along the way.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff that you just can't imagine that's going to come across your path.
Yeah.
And I think storytelling might be like that. Maybe surprising yourself with a twist or bringing in other writers or just sort of letting things naturally and organically evolve. Like maybe that's a fun way for them to come up with a story that even surprises the folks creating the movies. So I don't know. I'm not too critical of that.
Me neither.
The thing that surprised me on Twitter, maybe shouldn't surprise me, about that interview was how there's basically two different camps that spun it completely different ways.
Oh yeah.
And
you knew that would happen before it even happened.
Yep. And like, I didn't hear the interview, so I can't hear like the tone of his voice or sort of how he's putting it out there. But like, some people were like, finally, we have an admission from the guy who messed it up that he messed it up. And I'm like, that's not what he's saying.
No, it's not. You read closely. He's being very careful about how he's wording his answers.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because he knows that people on Twitter and wherever else, the Randys of the world, they're just gonna tear this crap apart. So I think he was just like thoughtfully reflecting on, hey, it's been a few years since it's been years since I picked up the mantle to bring back the Skywalker saga to the big screen. I have some reflections, and I'm being, honest, but, thoughtful about what I'm saying. And some people are just like, guilty. He's admitting it. He's admitting that he messed it up. And I'm just like, I'll close Twitter again for the day.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah. Let's just come back to this when we have clearer heads. Oh, wait, it's still been, 5 years now since we got, oh no, gosh. It's been 4 years since Last Jedi, and we've still got people so upset about it and raving. It's just.
And it's fine if you don't like it, but if the main characteristic of your personality at this point is that you hate a certain movie that came out 4 years ago, that's not healthy.
Let's just move on.
Let's move on.
Go back to enjoying life and what we love about Star Wars. That's what we...
Yeah.
Let's go on to our next piece of news. There's a lot of little tidbits. Go ahead.
Here's a happy one from the Twitterverse, which sometimes doesn't deliver, as we were just saying. But I was really pleasantly surprised by recently... The Make Solo 2 Happen hashtag blew up in a big way.
It did.
And a lot of people were sharing all the different stuff that they loved about Solo. The casting, the characters. Like, people want an Ephes Nest movie, comic book series, Disney Plus show. People love Donald Glover as Lando. And that's one of my favorite castings ever. People love seeing the Falcon when it was pristine and clean, and there was a whole walk-in closet full of capes for Lando.
Yes,
this is the cult classic, I think, of Star Wars movies.
It totally is, and it deserves to be. It has earned its place there. Just the little stuff that even Solo does. The one that I think you posted a tweet about this this is a thermal detonator, not a rock, and changed my mind or something.
Little stuff like that.
Just doing the noise. And like, I feel like the love for Solo triumphs over the hate for it. It's
I would
really
agree.
weird.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I hope they still bring some stuff back, like Kira's story or Emvas Nest, like you said, or they are going to bring back Lando, but are they bringing Donald Glover back?
That I don't know.
I don't know if we confirmed that yet.
I have not heard that confirmed. That's for sure. I could see a world where that happens, but I could also see it where it doesn't happen. Like I don't know. It's tough to say.
We'll find out.
He strikes me as like as a person. He strikes me as an artistic guy, like a genuine artistic guy, and his integrity matters, and he wants to work on stuff that matters, or whatever. And he's not just doing stuff for a paycheck. I feel like.
Yeah.
So if there's something else that like has his attention for a couple of years, like maybe he just won't make himself available. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think the difficult thing is like there's probably some contractual obligations, but they're related to the movies, not necessarily to Disney Plus. So they probably have to be renegotiated. So you can't just rely on like going, "Hey, come back and play this character that you played for the movies." So there's probably a lot more behind the scenes, which one day we'll figure out who's going to be playing this Lando character in it, and we'll figure out more. But wait, time will tell.
Yep.
So that was another piece of news. Filoni got a promotion.
Yes.
That was another one, right?
Yep. Dave Filoni, one half of Favroloni, which is the super duo who is behind The Mandalorian and who some people think are behind the future of Star Wars in general. And so now his title is Executive Creative Director. And your imagination can run wild about what that might mean. It doesn't mean anything specific yet in terms of like he's not already like green lighting stuff or creating anything from scratch because of the authority that comes with his new position, but it's probably not far behind.
Yeah, I think this is just a vote of confidence and the respect that he's been able to garner from the fandom in his ability to execute great stories and tell stories that are good, not just in animation form, which is what he's given a ton of to Star Wars, but then to translate that into the stories that we get in The Mandalorian. And it sounds like the Favroloni pair is really working well. I was reading a quote about them, about Favreau talking about Filoni and saying that Favreau kind of feels like the lawyer coming into the conversation and saying, I want to be able to do this in Star Wars. And Dave is sitting there going, no, this is what you can and can't do. This is what Star Wars you're allowed to do in Star Wars, and this is what you're not allowed to do.
Interesting.
And kind of playing the role that George Lucas played for Dave just a decade ago.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting way to think about that. So he's kind of taken the mantle of George Lucas and being able to own the storytelling behind this. And anything that, wants to be told in Star Wars has to run by Dave is my guess of how this is running, but I have no idea.
I think you're right. I think he's taken up that mantle, and I think pretty soon he's going to start wearing like white New Balance sneakers and denim shirts, and his beard is going to go
cowboy
gray.
Hat of his. I mean, it works. I mean, you can pull off any look that he wants. We're just looking at an image of him right now. He's kind of like Taika, who's wearing his, what is that? Plaid? Not plaid. I can't even tell what kind of hat
He's wearing
that is.
like a baseball cap that his mom knit for him or something.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly the best description of that. We just finished watching, for everybody at home, the Mandalorian season 2 in the background, and it's showing the picture for the gallery. That's what's up.
That's like the other day I saw a picture on Twitter of Ludwig Göransson. I think one of his kids. I think he's got little kids.
That's cool.
And they
little
were like
Ludwigs.
What's that?
Little Ludwigs.
Right, mini Ludwigs running around. I think they were at the beach, and everybody was dressed normally.
The beach or the shore?
They were down the shore.
Okay.
Ludwig Göransson was 100% in Wildwood, New Jersey, waiting to go on a roller coaster and get some Rita's water ice. But everybody was dressed normally, but he was wearing like fluorescent yellow pants and like a pirate shirt. Meanwhile, people are just like wearing what you would expect normal human beings on planet Earth in this year to be wearing at the beach, but not Ludwig.
Not Ludwig. I mean, this is the guy with like really long hair and all like every instrument in the world, and he can play them. You're like, how did you even come to find out this exists, let alone learn to play it?
He's the guy that like Favreau went to him and said, "Hey, I'd love for you to create some music for this show," and he was like, "I've got some flutes." Like, okay. I guess try that.
What else you got? drums.
I've also got an electric guitar to go with the flutes.
And a lot of bongo drums.
Right. And they're like, you know what? You go enjoy your creative process with your fluorescent pants, and we'll
Show
talk
us
in a
what you
month.
got.
Yep.
We'll see if we like it. He comes back, we love this.
Yeah, it worked. But if you describe it not having any reference point, you're just like, wow, this person's a crazy.
This guy did what before coming to me? What,
Right.
like, because he had done a lot of stuff. He did Black Panther, was it?
Yeah, I think he did stuff for TV and movies.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I think people have been big fans of his for a long time. I think even when he was a college student, I think he had a following.
Oh, I'm not surprised. A guy like that.
But
He's playing hacky sack out in the yard. I play with him.
you know, it's funny you say that.
I played hacky sack all the time growing up.
Me too.
Sweet.
Me too. I just learned today, I was doing a little bit of research for this episode over my lunch break, and I learned that in college, Jon Favreau's nickname was Johnny Hack.
Do you play a lot of hacky sack?
He was the hacky sack guy on campus.
I wonder if he had one of the sand ones. Those were the best.
The what?
The sand ones. The ones that had sand
Oh,
in
yes,
it.
because some of them have like the
beads.
The beads or pellets or whatever, and then some of them have sand. Yeah.
The sand ones were the best.
Yep.
Loved those. I had a lot of fun
Johnny
playing.
Hack and Ben Hack Skywalker.
Benny Hack.
Benny Hack.
Actually, my nickname in college or in high school was Benny.
Benny?
Everyone called me Benny from 10th grade on.
Benny Hack.
At least the ones in band. Anyway, let's move on before we get into any bad high school stories.
Fair enough.
What else happened in the news? So Filoni got a promotion. Oh, bad news. Rangers of the New Republic no longer in production.
This was one of the 87 shows that they said that were going to be coming out in the Star Wars universe and through Disney Plus.
That was the exact number that they had.
It was 87-ish. That was in the ballpark.
Give or take 20 or 86. No, they decided to move on from this one, and then there was, again, a ton of speculation as to why, and lots of thoughts of it surrounding Cara Dune and the fact that they decided to move on from the actress. Why am I blanking?
Gina Carano.
Thank you.
But who was listed in the "We Submit for Your Consideration" that
Yes.
poster that they put out?
Yes,
So,
I remember that.
yep.
Which, all right, we're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
All right, that's all to the side. We don't talk about that on this podcast. Go to other ones that talk about it, and then you can get their perspective. Here's mine. Not related. That being said, here's mine. Maybe it is related to that. I don't know. But my guess is if it was, they decided to just put it on ice until they know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have plans to bring her back and recast her or something, or maybe even bring that. Who really knows?
Yeah.
So let's stop the speculation. Let's just accept it's not going to happen. There's a ton of other shows coming out. Let's not forget there's 86 other shows, like you just said.
Yeah.
That is not the actual number, disclaimer. But there's so much to look forward to, and it could just be, I think that Favreau and Filoni were behind this one as well. Like,
I think
they're
so.
spread thin.
They're spread really thin. And I
Really
think
thin.
that's where my mind ultimately got to. Like, yeah, I did a little bit of speculating of what it might be. But don't
We
be
all do.
angry that we don't have this show anymore. Like, there's so much new Star Wars coming down the pike. And also, speaking of the 87 shows and fact-checking that, don't come to this show for facts. Come to
So wait, if they're not coming for opinions, they're not coming for facts, what are they coming for?
They're just lonely.
If you want something in between of facts and opinions, this is the show for you.
So, yeah, it's infotainment light is what this show is.
I think we're more on the side of fact than
I think
that's where I would put.
I think we try to I think we try to stick to the facts as much as we can.
Yeah.
But we also like hyperbole and we like goofing around a little bit. So there's a bunch of
little
shows
bit.
coming.
Yeah. Moving on to the other big things that happened in the last 2 weeks. The Bad Batch. We got
Yes.
2 more episodes. Like we said, we would kind of cover some of our favorite moments from them, and then we'll have an episode just dedicated to recovering the first season later on.
You know what we forgot to do, by the way? We were gonna go and see what the Bad Batch was called in all these different parts of the world, like the title, and then literally
we
translate
did.
it back
All right, next time.
next time. Because the one that I saw translated back into English was the Lousy Batch.
Doesn't have the same ring to it.
It doesn't hit the same way. It feels
Yeah.
different. So we'll do that at some point.
Yeah.
But what'd you think of the last 2 episodes? I'm loving this 1 episode a week thing because I think, as a quick aside, we've been kind of
Same.
conditioned as TV viewers to binge the last
Yeah.
few years. Netflix
like
dumps stuff on you. They say, hey, here's a whole season. Watch 25 episodes and lose a whole weekend of your life. I like this whole thing of like, Friday night, my routine has become these last 4 weeks, wrap up work, whatever, have dinner, wind down a little bit, and then put on the Bad Batch. That's like my Friday night thing.
It is. And then they're going to do it again. But I like that they're kind of staging out some of their content in the next Marvel one that's coming out. They're going to do it on Wednesday. They don't want them competing. They're like, tune in on Wednesday and tune in on Friday again.
Cool.
Since you're probably only tuning in to watch one show at a time and don't want to have competing priorities. I mean, and let's just face it. There's a lot of fans that love Star Wars and Marvel, me being one. So I appreciate that. But I agree with you. The once a week thing is working for me. I like feeling like I'm looking forward to the next thing, not just immediately satiating that, that desire to know what's happening next by watching the next episode.
Yeah. And I think that's good for the community because it's not like with some other shows where you can actually binge them. You go to talk to somebody about the show that you're just getting excited about, and they're like, oh, yeah, just you wait. And it gets really crazy, and then something else happens. I won't spoil it for you, but I finished the whole first season in one day. And it's like, oh, okay, we're in different places. But
and then Randy walks up to the cubicle and is like, did you hear that? Or did you see that part where this happened? And you're like, I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
And then he tells you the whole thing, and then he goes, oh, spoiler alert.
Randy. There you go again. Sorry for anyone named Randy. I don't know how.
Total Randy move.
We love you. No, so we got some good episodes of... Let's get back to the Bad Batch. We got some good episodes of the Bad Batch this week. I really liked them. The third one was fine. Cornered. Or no, sorry. That was the fourth one. Replacements was the first one that we got. This one was like it was interesting. It was kind of a repeat of I felt like it was like the Minox scene from Empire Strikes Back. Redone.
It was totally that.
Okay, good. Yeah. That wasn't the only one that made that connection. Good. Yep. That was the first thing that I noticed. But what I liked the most was actually the stuff that was happening with Crosshairs and I guess the replacements. Mm-hmm. That was actually my favorite stuff of this. But what did you like?
If we're just sticking with that episode for now, I liked some of Omega's heroism and her being brave and jumping down that dark tunnel and putting herself in harm's way to try to save the Dad Batch. I love that stuff because I think right off the bat, she seems super gutsy and like an independent thinker and stuff. But that was a situation where it was like, okay, you could get eaten alive and she's going to jump in there head first. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I did too. I thought the fact that she's trying to learn from them, and I think they're still a little hesitant of being the Dad Batch or whatever you want to say right now. They're like, okay, we got this other person, but she's just like, I want to learn from you. I want to
she's earning their respect.
She is. You're right. And the fact that she goes in after them, gets what they need, and comes back out fine, not having to use her blaster, and how proud she is of that. And
I loved that.
Same.
I loved that she didn't resort to doing that.
Yeah.
She found a way, and obviously, I just talked about Randy, but this is spoiler ridden, so I'm assuming that you guys know what we're talking about here.
True.
But she found a way to get herself out of that situation without using any violence.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
And I think that earned the respect of the rest of the Bad Batch a bit more. The best part was Wrecker making the room for her.
Yeah.
That was so touching and sweet. I just loved that. That probably was actually my favorite moment. But let's get to the Crosshair stuff for a second because, okay, these new replacements come in. Crosshair is assigned to train them, and then they go out on their first mission together to find Saw Gerrera and his crew. Mm-hmm. And they can't find Saw Gerrera. They just find a bunch of civilians. Crosshair says, all right, well, let's kill them all then. And the one stormtrooper stands up to him. Mm-hmm. And what I love so much about this, it's dark, really dark part, right? It's like, oh, let's remember for a second, this is Star Wars, and yes, it's animated, but this is one of the things that you might want to screen for your children.
Absolutely.
Depending on their age.
A lot of people on social media were saying that. They were like, I sat down to watch this fun show on Disney Plus, and then this happened.
I'm like, okay, do I have to explain some things to my children right now?
Yeah, it was really dark.
It got dark there pretty quick. And what I really liked about that scene was not how dark it got. I mean, that was definitely part of it. But the fact that the stormtrooper stood up to him. Mm-hmm. And you could kind of see this is at the beginning. They're still ironing out some details. They're still figuring things out. The Empire isn't cemented yet, and the stormtroopers aren't really dedicated to this yet. And as soon as they realize what they're doing, they're hesitant. Mm-hmm. They're human, and they realize what they're doing is inhumane. And so the stormtrooper stands up and is a martyr for it. And it's beautiful. To me, that's the beautiful part of this scene. And then, once Crosshair does the deed, the rest of the stormtroopers fall in line, and that's how you see the Empire becoming the big powerhouse that it is. It's literally creating fear.
Yeah, they're scaring people into cooperating,
Compliance,
and to being complicit too.
Yes, that's a good word for it, complicit. So that's what I liked about it. And then following up with that, with Crosshair again, they enter the barracks again, which you notice are the barracks that they occupy together as the Bad Batch.
They go home.
And he sits down there, and I just get this, like, I guess I see this twinge in his eye of, like, I kind of miss my other comrades. Mm-hmm. And this isn't great. I don't really love this, but I've got this inhibitor chip that's blocking my ability to make that judgment for myself. Mm-hmm. So they planted that seed there, and I just can't wait to see what they do with that, because I really like just that moment.
Great point. That is a moment where conflict begins to brew. I'm excited to see what happens from there.
Me too.
And it also makes Crosshair a little less hateable.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I don't think we should hate him.
I don't think we should hate him either. But like in that moment where he orders the execution of those people and then executes that stormtrooper for disagreeing.
Yeah,
he's pretty dislikable there.
But he says the line, "Every good soldier follows orders," right?
Right.
He's
got to do what it takes.
He's just following his orders.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the inhibitor chip. It's blocking his ability to realize that this is wrong. What he's doing. That's really tough. Really difficult. Anything else on this episode?
No, let's move on.
Let's go to the cornered episode, because this one is probably my favorite so far.
A great action episode, for one thing. And I think you and I were texting about how George Lucas would love this one because of all the chases and the excitement and the flying around and zipping around in the speeders and things like that.
I felt like this was Filoni's way of saying, hey, Lucas, I saw what you did there in Attack of the Clones with that 15-minute chase, speeder chase scene.
Uh-huh.
I'll try that too.
Yes.
Let me just see if I can cram that into this one episode. Oh, I did.
Yeah.
Like, it was just such a power move by Filoni to put this whole well done, well elaborated. That scene where you see Fennec Shand turn around and the explosion behind her, is just like, oh, that's a guy that gets cinematography.
Love it.
That was so good.
A little thing that I liked about it. So you called out Fennec Shand, so she's in it, and she is a total boss, and loved seeing her in it, and she definitely contributed to a lot of the really great action in this episode. One of the things a subtle thing that I liked was at the very end when she crashes and she is basically off the chase. Like, she knows that she's not going to be able to catch up and get Omega this time.
Mm-hmm.
And get to those guys this time. After the crash, she gets up, she limps a little bit. And just enough to remind you that she's not invincible. Despite the fact she seems invincible when she's flying through the air and commandeering flying vehicles, and she's a sharpshooter and all that stuff. But it shows a little bit of vulnerability and weakness, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if I picked up on that. Good call. I thought you were going to say something about her phoning her friend, whoever that is.
No,
and
but that's worth talking about too.
Right. So there's something that's planted there, which my guess is that whoever that person is that she was talking to is a middleman.
Yep.
I don't know who. Or it could just be she's talking straight with the Caminos. The Kaminoans, I'm sorry. Because I'm guessing that they're the ones that are trying to track Omega. Like, they planted that in the end of Replacements in that third episode, that they need her back to be able to complete the work that they want to do, which I would speculate is amounting to something. But the fact that they need her back means that they're willing to do whatever it takes, need to go in secret ways to get her back, and that's a great place for a bounty hunter to enter.
Yeah.
Right? One that's skilled. And that's the other thing that's really good about their portrayal of Fennec Shand in this. She's portrayed as very skillful, not just in getting her bounty, but in doing it in deceitful ways.
Yeah.
Like, she didn't just pick her up and run. She was like, here, let me help you.
Yeah.
Let's go together and find the person you're looking
sort of
for.
Tricky and coercive, and which is a good skill set to have on top of being a sharpshooter and being able to hotwire a car or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. A speeder, they don't have cars, right?
Right.
I'm just messing with you. But yeah, I really like that stuff. I know you liked one other thing of this episode.
I liked Clink a lot. And I'm not alone. There's a lot of people all over the interwebs these days who are going nuts about the droids in this episode.
The Twitterverse exploded at Clink.
One of my favorite ones was there's just a still frame shot of Clink, and somebody just tweeted, "How are you going to tell me that this is not a little kid in a robot costume?"
I want to see the live action version of this so that we can see the little kid in the costume.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, like they play a key role in helping to get the Dad Batch back off the planet. But for the most part, this is one of those flashes of there's a character who is not going to be a main character necessarily, but they all of a sudden just leave this big impression on people. It's happened a million times before, especially in the movies. But I think Clink is going to become a fan favorite. I think people are going to cosplay Clink at Celebration next year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if they're cosplaying Wilbur Hood.
Yeah.
If they're cosplaying him,
yeah,
there's gonna be someone cosplaying Little Clink.
You know what I want to see? So. As just a quick aside, I love that people cosplay George Lucas.
Yeah, totally.
I love that there are just people out there who are like, all right, I'm going to tape a beard on and get a denim shirt, like I said, and then I'm going to walk around and just play the George Lucas part at Celebration. Okay, cool.
Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, what's even better is if you can pull it off and make it super convincing. I mean, sure, that's awesome. Like
some of them are really convincing, but some of them are just like, all right, you're a 16-year-old girl.
So funny that you mentioned that, because this episode is they go to the planet. I think Pantera, was it?
Pantero, I think.
Okay, this one, it sounded familiar to me. I'm like, where do I know this from? And it's actually from the Clone Wars. It's a planet that was introduced in the Clone Wars. And I'm pretty sure that it's the race of like blue, like they're blue skinned people.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of these episodes, they have a character that is blue skinned and looks just like George Lucas.
No.
So this is the planet that they went back and visited, was the George Lucas lookalike planet. Did I lose you?
Awesome. No, you did not lose me. I'm bowled over by the awesomeness.
Yeah, you should go check that out. I realized that later. As I was researching, I was like, what planet is this? And like, oh, that's the same planet this guy's from. It's awesome. And then we said that, I'm like, oh, boom, there we go.
It's awesome.
All right, let's move on from the Bad Batch. Looking forward to the next couple episodes because they're really setting the stage for something epic. I can feel something great.
Yep.
And maybe catastrophic coming. That's what I kind of mentioned. It was like my mind is kind of going to like, all right, we know that Kamino isn't a part of the Empire. We don't see them at all. Like they're just gone. So this is maybe going to answer like why they're not at the center of the stage anymore in terms of like creating the troopers for the Empire and stuff. So something bad goes wrong there. And maybe that creates a little war with the Kaminoans and maybe the Bad Batch are on their side too.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have the new Empire fighting it and duking it out with them. That's where I'm guessing it's going, but some really cool stuff is getting introduced. I'm looking forward to.
I think so. And I think that one of the things we're seeing is that the Bad Batch is being pressed into some kind of action because they're getting desperate. They're finding that they can't really go anywhere to be safe.
Right.
It's hard to lay low. Now there's one of the best bounty hunters in all of galactic history is hunting them. They'll probably just add more to the case. There's probably going to be multiple bounty hunters. And it reminds me a little bit of some of the story arcs in The Mandalorian, where Mando and Grogu find that there's nowhere safe for them to go. Yeah. And then that presses some of the action because they have to make certain alliances and they have to do things to survive. So
they have to take difficult jobs just to keep, getting some food and getting some fuel to get to the next planet and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of, that's a really good parallel there. Such a good parallel that maybe we should use it to go into our next segment. Actually, no, I have one more piece of news that will help us get to our next segment first.
Great. Lay it on me.
So we were given some new Funko Pops from season 2 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, look at that.
And there's our segue. So if you want to add to your collection with Mando holding baby Grogu.
I love that one.
No helmet. That's the one I love.
Sans helmet.
Sans helmet. Yep. Good use of the word sans, a French word. Yeah, you can get that in a Funko Pop now, which is probably my favorite of the group.
Yeah, I love that one.
Then the second favorite is Grogu with the cookies. You can get Ahsoka with the blades, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, and the Dark Trooper.
A Dark Trooper one. Wow.
Yeah.
Scary. Menacing.
So anything that this is usually the spoilery ones that they don't want to release before or around
Right.
the same time. Like they want to give people enough time to see it, and then after enough time has passed, like 6 months or so, that's where we are. They're like, hey, let's get all the spoilery ones out there. Because I remember with when Endgame came out, there were a bunch of the spoilery ones that I want. I was like, where is the one where, spoilers for MCU, where Captain America is holding Mjolnir? I need that one. And couldn't find it. And then 6 months later, they came out with one.
Yep.
So I own that one, by the way.
You do?
I do.
Cool.
Definitely own that one. And the one of Stark snapping.
Cool.
Enough said.
Do you remember right before season 2 of The Mandalorian came out, there was a little bit of a leak with some merchandise, and one of the things was a Funko of Grogu with the egg tank,
eggs.
with Frog Lady's egg tank.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know anybody who actually got that one. Was that real?
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I actually saw it when we went down to the
Yeah, we
comic
saw it
store
at
with Chris Ryans.
When we went down to see our bro host, Chris Ryans, at Atomic City Comics on South Street in Philadelphia, PA, USA, planet Earth.
Way to plug. Sorry we don't have the address to give to you, but Google it.
Google it.
Just Google Broaxium. You'll find us all.
Yes. And yeah, that's right. I think we saw it down there.
Yeah. We
Very
did.
cool.
But I don't know anybody that has actually owned it. But there's so many Funkos that how can you own them all?
Yeah. Some will try.
This isn't Pokemon here.
And Disney will gladly take your credit card and try to help you out with that task.
They will. You didn't pick up on that.
What?
Pokemon.
Pokemon?
Got to catch them all.
You do got to catch them all. You're right. I actually have my Pokemon Go app on my phone.
I don't think I ever downloaded that.
No?
I'm such a party pooper.
I've been playing it for years. I deleted it and I went back, and now I can go back and look at like all the different places I've caught Pokemon on my work trips.
I'm a I'm a Pokemon party pooper.
A little bit. It's okay.
Sorry.
Every party has a pooper.
On that note, that's the best segue you've ever given me. Thank you. Let's go to segment 2. More to the story. And this time we're going to do more to the story of The Mandalorian Season 2. And
Yes.
finish our 3-part take on the second season. And finished with Episode 7, The Believer, and Episode 8, The Rescue.
Yeah.
Some fantastic episodes. Remember where we left off. Grogu has been kidnapped. Dun, dun, dun.
Yep.
The Razor Crest has been destroyed. Dun, dun, dun. We're in a pretty difficult place. Mando's getting desperate.
Yep.
He goes back to Cara Dune, solicits her help to get Grogu back. And that's where we leave everything off. And we start off with The Believer. So I'll let you take it away. What are the things you want to talk about with this episode?
So let me just say real quick that I feel like the right amount of time passed between my last viewing of these episodes and, watching them to prepare for this episode. And I watched them both this week. And I'd seen them before. I'd seen them multiple times before. But I had just had a rest. And
Yeah.
I had not come back. And so I felt like I was looking at things with fresh eyes, but, with the benefit of knowing how things turn out. So
Yeah.
when I initially watch one of these episodes, and I'll do this with Mandalorian Season 3, I will get wrapped up in different things that I'm seeing on the screen. I'll get wrapped up in the music. I'll get wrapped up in trying to make connections and things like that. And then you have some unintentional blindness, and I feel like you miss things. So coming back this time and not having, the burden of being a first-time watcher or something, or a second-time watcher, I feel like I have a different impression of these episodes, and I have a different impression of The Believer. And I think the first time I saw it, maybe the first couple times I watched it, I got kind of hung up on Mayfeld and his, what I thought of as a revenge scene in the cafeteria where, he shoots everybody up.
Yeah, that's how I thought of it. Changed my mind.
What's that?
Changed my mind.
Well, I this time I came back to it and I thought of it more as I thought the arc was a little bit longer. I think it takes the whole episode, but rather than Revenge of the Mayfeld, I think it's more of like Mayfeld's redemption in some ways.
Yeah.
And it matters sort of where you stop along the story, but I think it really matters where things end for a character.
Totally.
So when we part ways with Mayfeld, I think that there's something in him that has changed in some way for the better. And at the end, we might come back to this, but I want to ask you, what's the next phase of Mayfeld's life like? Because thus far, he's been in the employ of the bad guys.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't love it. Then he became a bad guy, like a rogue mercenary bad guy.
Well, that's all he really knew. It was really hard to kind of shake that.
Yeah, and he talks at different points about being a survivor, and but he survived the hard way on the bad side for the most part.
Yeah.
And I think at the end, and I know I'm jumping around, I think at the end when Cara Dune says, Mayfeld was killed in the mission, I think, psychologically for him, that's an opportunity for him to let go of all that burden of his past.
Yeah.
And potentially be somebody new.
Oh, I love that.
But, we can go back to the beginning, and I think that Bill Burr's acting here is terrific.
Oh, so good.
It's so spot on. And I think some of the monologue-y type conversations he has, like, for example, when he's driving with Mando.
He goes, well, if you live on Mandalore, you believe one thing. If you live on Alderaan, you believe another thing. But guess what? None of them exist anymore.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, dude, this is heavy stuff.
Yeah. And it feels like it's almost like a stand-up performance.
Yeah.
Like Bill Burr's stand-up experience lends itself really well to him delivering those lines really nicely.
Yeah. Totally.
But yeah.
I talked to you about one of my favorite lines that I laugh out loud at is, it's too bad you're not coming along with this, Cara. You've got such a sunny disposition. Like, I literally laugh out loud every time he delivers that because it's so funny.
I love it. Yeah.
He's so good, but then he gets so serious. And that's where you get to see, like, okay, this stand-up comedian has acting chops?
Yeah.
Well, how does that happen?
He does.
He's got some good ones.
He's got some range.
I like when I see him in the scene where he shoots Valen Hess, and you see this like
who's like one of the best short-lived villains in all of Star Wars.
Oh, you hate him instantly.
Yeah, he's so good.
And not gonna lie, the Southern accent really makes it worse.
It adds to it, right?
Not because I actually think Southern accents are kind of cool. For the most part, depends on the scenario, I guess. But like for the most part, I really think they're cool.
What's a bad scenario?
I don't know. Like there's sometimes my
put
wife
your hands where I can see them.
Maybe that's one. No, there's sometimes my wife will show me some from like where her family's from and the way they talk.
Do you want another raccoon burger?
Where I'm like, oh gosh, this went too far. I am a city slicker, I guess, is what my wife likes to call me. What was one that she showed me the other day? Oh, she showed me one of like chickens coming on this one guy's property.
Like, I saw that too.
Right? And she's like, and the guy's just like, get out of my yurt, chickens, or whatever he says.
It was like a how-to video. Like he was like, if chickens are, it was more the accent. If chickens are eating your flowers, there's one easy way to take care of them, and just start shooting a gun in the air, and the chickens run for their lives.
And I'm just like, oh. Okay, this is how we live.
That's the part of the South that I struggle with.
That's the part I'm just like, okay, moving on. But no, I think the fact that he delivers it in that tone, and it just, for some reason, it really did it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It really sold it really well. Moving on from that.
Can I ask you a question about this episode?
Yeah.
I know that we often get to questions later, but I think it's important because it's right at the top. So who's the believer?
That's a very good question. I always thought it was Mayfeld, which, by the way, do you know what Mayfeld's first name is?
No, but you told me that you did, and I'd love to know. I
found out. Miggs.
Miggs Mayfeld?
Yeah.
Does that come up in the first season?
I don't know. I don't think I ever heard it.
I don't think I heard it either.
So I have to go back and see what I said, but I was doing my research this time and saw Miggs. I'm like, Miggs? Okay. Let's just call him Mayfeld.
Yep. Mayfeld
Mayfeld works. So what was your question?
Who's the believer?
Who's the believer? I thought it was Mayfeld. I always looked at it being Mayfeld because he's expressing his beliefs. But by the end of it, I think it's both Mayfeld and Mando. They're changed from the experience that they just had together. At one point, at the beginning of this, they were enemies. Remember when Mayfeld sees Boba Fett and he's like, oh, I thought you were this other guy. Yep. And then the other guy
himself.
Walks off. And he's like, oh, he's here too.
Yeah.
Of course he is. Like, they're not on good terms. In the middle of the episode, they're like, let's just get one thing straight. We are not the same person. And Mayfeld's like, I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Right? So they're having a reconciliation between the two of them, and they both come out stronger from it.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's both. How would you answer?
Man, it's tough because I think you could come at it from a few different ways. I think that you could say that Mayfeld is a believer at the beginning of the episode in a certain way of survival and a certain way of life. And it's gotten him that far. But somebody wise once said to me, what got you here won't necessarily get you there. So I think there's a change in belief for Mayfeld Mayfeld. So I think he's sort of one type of believer, and that type of believer is a bit of a pessimist and has a certain outlook of the world that isn't all rosy. And not to say that he's completely changed by the end, but I think he sees more possibility.
To your point earlier, which I really like, old Mayfeld is gone and dead, right? He died there on Morak in some kind of accident and explosion.
Yeah.
And a new Mayfeld is born. And he's able to go and figure out who that is.
Yeah.
And what that means. I think he goes back to that village that
You think
he passed.
so?
I think he does. I think he settles down for a more simple life, kind of like what Mando got an opportunity to do. And he settles down for a little bit, and he helps open their minds up to what's going on in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And helps them to not be taken advantage of anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're on that planet, they're kind of getting walked all over, right?
Yeah.
By the Empire. So maybe that's what he does.
But
But he's going to take an opportunity to be better.
I totally agree. And I think that moment where he kind of snaps in the cafeteria and decides that he's going to resort to violence, I think that that's coming from a place of him recognizing in himself that he's always had some version of right and wrong. And he was witness to something that was really wrong. And now
he was a peon in that group, so he couldn't say anything about it.
He couldn't say anything. He was just completely oppressed by like all that entire situation. But he knew, like in his gut, that what he was witnessing was wrong.
Right.
And he was faced with it again for a second time. And his belief in right or wrong kind of came to a head there. Like he had to act on it in some way. So I think that's part of it. I think another angle that I've taken on it is, obviously Mando could be the believer. And there is the belief, and then there's the dogma. And a lot of the Mandalorian series has been Mando losing some of the dogma of, okay, I consider myself a Mandalorian, and there's a code, and this is the way, etc. But you know what? If I have to, I'm going to swap my helmet out. And if I have to, I'm going to take my helmet off. If that's going to help me achieve the mission.
And this guy who kind of operates in the gray area is the one who actually taught me to get that, to do that. I mean, he talks about that. He goes, is the rule that you can't remove your helmet or that you can't show your face because they're different,
right?
You hear that how they're different, and I think in that moment you don't really get to see the facial reactions of the Mandalorian because he's under his mask the whole time, but you kind of get a sense that he's sitting here going, "Huh,
yeah,
I'm listening to you now. I'm still not sure about you, but I'm listening."
Yeah,
and I think where it starts to turn for Mando is in the cafeteria. That cafeteria, a lot of things happen for both of those characters. First, he sees Mayfeld stand up for him and come in and cover in a really fun and cool way because he's in a position where he knows how to do that better, right? Because he knows the protocols of the Empire. Mando doesn't. So the fact that he's willing to do that, the fact that he's willing to shoot up this entire room and then say, nobody saw your face. Like, dude.
Yeah.
Like, how do you not get converted to this guy after something like that?
Yeah.
Right? So there's some conversion happening on both sides.
Right.
To become a better believer.
Right.
And to have a little bit more faith. However you want to translate what that means to be a believer. But conversion is happening within both of them. And it's a really cool thing to see.
It's really cool.
I never expected that to be the episode following the one where Grogu gets kidnapped.
Yeah.
Right?
And right before the season finale.
Right.
But it works. It works really nicely.
It does.
One moment where I think a lot of people had to suspend disbelief a little bit, and obviously we're suspending disbelief because we're watching Star Wars here, and we know that it is fantasy and make believe and whatever.
It's real to me, man.
But
sorry,
the
term to make myself laugh.
When Mando goes over to the terminal to scan his face, like a lot of people ask the question. So, okay, so Mayfeld can't do it because his face is, whatever.
No. He could do it. He just didn't want to get recognized by Val and Hess.
Right. He could have done it, but he would have gotten recognized, and that would have blown their cover. So a lot of people were like, okay, so this is this terminal where you can get sensitive information about one of the Empire's most important assets, and it's like any old face will do.
Unless we have your face documented and we just already prove ourselves that we don't like you.
Right.
Because you're ISB or something like that.
Yep. But if you're a stranger, we'll let you know where the spaceship with little green guy is.
Here you go. Yes. Suspend belief just for a moment, y'all.
Yeah, but like dramatically, that worked so well when his like faces getting where the lights are going across his face, and he's got that moment of like, oh crap, is this gonna work? Like it works so well, but at the same time, it's like that's your technology.
Yeah, something's off there.
Yeah,
but okay, moving on.
Yep.
It worked for what? Okay, here's why it worked. We needed a reason to see Mando's face, y'all.
Yes.
Twice I've said y'all, and you're not calling me out on it. I'm trying to see what you're gonna do. I'm trying to be Randy for a moment. We needed to see his face, and they got a way to get it out there. So, which was great for setting up what we get in the next episode, which we'll get to in a moment. Here's one thought that I had, though.
Okay.
With this episode, there's some interesting things going on in the storytelling of what the Empire is doing at this moment. We don't focus enough on that, and this whole season we see it. So, first we saw it where there was this secret facility, research facility on Navarro. Yep. That they had to go infiltrate and destroy and all that stuff. And then in this episode, there is a secret facility, mining facility on Morak. Yep. And each time, I think this happened at least in the first one, each time Mando's kind of like, but there's nothing there, or that's abandoned. The Empire has done something, and that's where it kind of clicked. The Empire has done something where they've convinced, they found all these places where they could go, and no one's there. They can kind of install themselves and operate in the shadows and convince people that it's abandoned, they're not doing anything, and reinstall themselves in the galaxy in a very discreet way. Mm-hmm. So they're rebuilding themselves slowly, quietly. Mm-hmm. It's in a very sly way. That's the word I'm looking for. So I picked up on that this time when Mando's like, Morak, there's nothing there. I'm like, we've seen this before on Navarro and probably some other instances that I'm forgetting. But they just seem to be kind of planting some seeds little places and convincing everyone like they're not around anymore, but they're trying to regain their power slowly and in a very discreet way.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think we'll probably uncover a little bit more of that in season 3, if I had to guess.
I would have guessed so too.
I think that there's that's an interesting approach. Rather than trying to flex and show off what power you have left, trying to sort of sneak in and plant roots in people's backyards.
Yeah.
And
that's how the First Order came back, though.
Yeah.
So to me, this is kind of the planting the seeds for how the First Order is going to eventually come back. They rise from whatever ashes.
I like that.
So yeah. I think they're kind of secretly doing that in all these, and like kind of saying, all right, so how does the First Order eventually come about? We know that it takes 30 years for them to actually get some relevance, but along the way, there's some failed attempts.
Yeah.
Right? So this is one of those attempts.
That's how like Splinter Cell works.
Oh yeah.
Like and like the old paranoia of like during the Cold War in the U.S. and maybe other places, people used to think that there were Soviet spies all over the country, and that there would be an activation day where all of a sudden they would all stop pretending to be nice Americans and become the Soviets and try to take things over. And we'd suddenly realize that they were in every town right under our noses. Well, maybe the Empire's trying to do that. Maybe they're just trying to integrate into the background for now, and then they're just going to come exploding out once they're done, cooking up and brewing their Force-sensitive army and whatever else they're working on. Which
doesn't sound like it's going very well from the reports that we're getting, but hey,
how could that be easy, though?
Good try. What's that?
I said, how could that be easy? Like, it's gonna take some work. It's gonna take some trial and error.
Yeah, this isn't. It's probably not the first time it's crossed somebody's mind to try to see if they can create Force sensitivity in somebody.
I'm sure.
So there's one more thing that I want to make sure I talked about with this episode, and then we can move on.
Okay.
From my side, unless you have anything else, we get another one of those. Hey, Star Wars fans, remember that thing that you really, really like? Well, here it is again. In the seismic blast.
Oh yeah.
So we get to see Boba Fett's ship, the Slave One, flying around doing its thing, being really cool, like we have seen in the past and love. And then it uses one of those seismic charges, which we never got to actually see it destroy anything more than rock in Attack of the Clones. In this one, we get to see it destroy a couple of TIE fighters, which is cool.
And it's really satisfying.
And it's very satisfying just to hear that noise again. And people were so happy when they heard that noise for weeks. Like the interwebs were exploding with, like, hey, that favorite sound of Star Wars? Yeah. Oh, no, not the lightsaber sound. No, that other one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and everyone knew what you were talking about.
Yep.
That was so pleasing to hear. But I did a little bit of digging. So Ben Burt, who is the sound designer behind a lot of sounds in Star Wars, whether that's lightsabers or Darth Vader and his breathing, is also behind this one. Now, we've got some insights into how he's created some of these
Hang
sounds
on a
over the
minute.
year. What's up?
Hang on.
What?
That's amazing.
What?
That's the same guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just mind-blowing because most people probably don't know Ben Burt's name, but they
Sadly,
love his work.
He's got exactly. They know when they hear it.
Yep.
They know his work.
How cool is that?
That's got to be cool.
Ah, love
To
it.
be like, I made that noise. Well, he did this one too. But he is still yet to reveal how the noise was actually created.
Oh, you're
and made.
kidding.
So I was doing some digging and trying to find something. And he basically, in an interview, just said, can't some things remain a secret for a little bit? And that was like the only time that he ever talked about it. I couldn't find anything else. So listeners, if you have found proof of how that noise was made, please share that with me because I really want to know.
I'm curious now.
Yeah, I am too. Let's move on. Do you have anything else from this episode you want to talk about?
Nope, I'm ready to go.
All right.
Actually, one more thing. I apologize. And I
Okay.
do this all the time.
Liar.
I think this was the first episode where we saw the interior workings of Slave One. Is that
Oh
correct?
yeah, I think you're. Well, I mean, we saw it a little bit before, but not as detailed as we got in this one.
Right. I think when we go and we pick up Mayfeld and everybody's kind of buckled in, they're having that conversation of
Yeah.
like, what's in it for me? They got the kid, and he's like, oh, the little green guy. Like, and you can see Slave One rotating.
Yes.
With everybody staying upright, but the ship is sort of rotating around them. I think that's something that people have wondered about in the past.
They have.
I know it's something that people have wondered about. How does Slave One work? What does it look like inside? What are the different machinations and how is it engineered? And they gave us that. So thank you for that. I love it.
It was very satisfying. I meant to mention that. I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay, now let's go on to The Rescue.
Yeah.
Directed by, we didn't say who was directed the other one. So that was directed by Rick Famuyiwa.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one, The Rescue, is directed by Peyton Reed, who did the Passenger episode from the season, which was episode 2.
Famous for Dr. Mandible.
Yeah. And Ant-Man. All the
Ant-Man.
stuff in the MCU that he's done. He's got a lot of good stuff with comedy. And this one he proved he can do action just as well. Because there wasn't as much comedy in this one. Mostly just action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I didn't know what else to write down. I was just like, action, action, action. That's really what this is.
Yeah.
It's like the penultimate episode. It's reached this point, and this is kind of tying together a storyline that started way back at the beginning of The Mandalorian season 1 when we found Grogu. It's trying to tie that story up too.
Yep.
And so lots to do in this episode, but packed it with a ton of great action.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun to see. So where do you want to start with this one?
Ooh, that's a tough one. So I'm instantly brought back to, it's like 5:00 in the morning, and I'm standing in my living room because I've told you before that for most of the Mandalorian episodes this past year, I couldn't sit down. I had to stand and watch them. So it's like 5 in the morning, and I'm standing and I'm watching, and I'm avoiding spoilers, and I want to go on my phone, and I want to text people, and I want to look at Twitter and whatever, and I'm not. And I just got swept away by all the action that you mentioned, and the giant buildup. And I think, like the last one, I went back and I watched it with fresh eyes. I have not watched this episode in a few months. And something that really jumps out at me this time is the setup of the conflict that I assume is going to be one of the main conflicts of next season, where there are multiple conflicts of the Darksaber, Bo-Katan, Moff Gideon is still alive, and he's pretty slippery. He's going to find a way to continue to be a problem for everybody. He's not just going to be taken a prisoner and then he's going to disappear and not be in the next season.
Oh, yeah. I almost wonder if they'll do some kind of like Loki thing with him. By what I mean by that is he's the antagonist, and then when you need the antagonist to help you, a little bit like they did here with Mayfeld. He's the antagonist, and then when you need him, he becomes kind of the pseudo-protagonist, and in this case, he becomes a protagonist again. I'm using the right word, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to happen with him, but I do wonder if they're going to play some kind of like, we need you, we're desperate moment. I just wonder.
I could see that. So he would be almost like next season's Mayfeld amped up.
Yeah.
So an even grimier character. Because I do feel like in the beginning of the Believer episode, it's almost like the main characters all have to kind of like pinch their nose and agree to work with him of like, oh, this is, this is so below us or whatever.
Yeah.
I could see something like that happening again. But so to me, like something that like things that jumped out were like there's major conflicts potentially brewing in the future. And even like the Dark Troopers, like the fact that they have those Dark Troopers, those aren't the only ones.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we know that they have them and we know how tough they are, that just adds to the clout of the Empire and could be an even bigger problem in the future.
Oh, yeah.
So to me,
well, we see how tough they are. Like, I mean, they talk about the improvements that they made to them to make them droids.
Yeah.
Right. To remove the human element.
Yeah.
How we saw how difficult it was for the Mandalorian to take down one.
Yeah.
So they're probably looking at like, yeah, that was a great trial run for these. Just don't put them against the Jedi.
Yeah.
Then and we'll be fine.
Right.
But other than that, they should be able to handle any situation we put them into.
Yeah. So yeah, I think stuff like what jumped out to you in this last viewing? Did you watch it again this week to prepare?
Oh yeah, I watched it last night.
Okay, cool.
It was fantastic. It was great to rewatch that one. So here are a couple things that I wanted to pause and talk about. The first one is the intro.
Okay.
We're introduced to a guy. Do we ever get his name? I don't think we do. He's the pilot that is taking our friend
Dr. Pershing.
Dr. Pershing to I'm guessing to what's his name? Here I am blanking on everyone's names. Moff Gideon. My gosh. Why don't you just tell this story? And there's this really interesting dialogue that happens on the ship between this guy who's antagonizing Cara Dune and trying to basically barter for his life so that he doesn't get killed right then and there. And he does it in such a manipulative, conniving way that it's very unsettling.
It's very creepy and slimy and dark. And,
yeah. They got the right guy to deliver those lines.
Yeah.
But he does some interesting things. He's talking about how you guys that murdered millions, like Alderaan, destroying Alderaan was sacrificing just a few people in the galaxy to try to rid our world of terrorism, our galaxy of terrorism. In his mind, they were justified to destroy Alderaan.
Yeah.
And that's what he says right then and there. Is like, but you guys destroyed 2 Death Stars and killed millions of people along the way, and you are evil because of that. It's like, hey, pause for a second, dude. Do you hear the ludicrousy of what you just said? You just said that it was okay that you guys destroyed a whole planet, but how dare they retaliate by destroying your Death Star?
Yeah.
It was so dark and sinister, but again, he delivers it in such a slimy way. And it made me still pause, as awful as it sounded, and go, huh, so is this part of this conflict? Like, does he have reason in what he's saying? If not reason, do we hear similar dialect today around terrorism?
We do.
And so I think it was a bit of a commentary on terrorism a bit.
I think it's a little bit of that, and I think it's also a commentary. Well, more so to me.
It's not promoting it, obviously.
No. Yeah, more so to me, it was a bit of a commentary on regular people getting swept up in major events. And I think that this is a theme throughout Star Wars. We've talked about how George Lucas liked the idea of these old samurai movies that would show the peasants in the town that were affected by the feudal battles between samurai. They had no power to prevent these battles and these wars and these conflicts, and they were sort of swept up by them. And George Lucas has talked about how R2-D2 and C-3PO are representative of that. They don't have their own agency. They can't do things on their own. They can't affect politics, and like they're just sort of swept up in everything that's happening. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Clerks with Kevin Smith, but there's I think it was in that one. There's a little bit of dialogue about how, look, on the Death Star, there must have been plumbers. There must have been ordinary people who needed to put food on the table, who needed to make a living, and who probably didn't think that working for the Empire was the greatest thing, but they might have been desperate. They might have not had many other options, and so they became a plumber on the Death Star. And that's where it becomes gray. It does feel more black and white to try to eliminate a source of great evil in the galaxy. But then there's also, the plumbers and the custodians and the people who, fix the lights when the light bulb goes out or something. And it's like, well, do those people deserve to get blown up?
Right.
Yeah.
They don't. right? No, first of all, nobody does. But then again, if you're the one blowing up, then, and that's what the lesson I took from this is like, you can't fight terror with terror, or terrorism with terror.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to make sure, and that's where the hard part is like that. Luke was just this unassuming kid that came into the battle and happened to destroy. But do you think that sat with him really well? Do you think everyone went back and was cheering, were supporting him for that? But as time went on, do you think he thought about that and was just like,
probably,
what did I do?
You're
How many
probably
people
right.
did I kill in that moment?
Right.
Like, that would have been awful.
Like, he probably needed therapy
I would hope so.
after that. I hope he got help.
I hope he did.
By the way, May is mental health awareness month. So if you feel like you need help, email the Star Bros. We're happy to talk to you and support you.
Yes.
Things have been tough out there.
Yeah. It's been a crazy year, guys.
We're joking around a little bit, but we also recognize that some of these are real challenges that people face, and we send you love and hugs. But anyway, back to Luke.
Oh, I don't mean to play lightly of any of this. This is just the stuff that you think about as you watch these things. This commentary on war and on fighting. And
Heavy
like
stuff, real things that
so heavy.
And this is why people get drawn into Star Wars, right? It's not because it's pure fantasy. It's because there are things that really connect to us.
So I want to move us on to another scene that I thought was really interesting. Again, none of this has anything to do with what happened during all the action, but the scene with Bo-Katan in the bar there on that planet where they bring Boba Fett in was just really interesting. The first thing, I think when we got done watching Bo-Katan in episode 3 of this season, we were all so happy she was back and excited and everything. And then you get to this episode and I don't know, the way that it starts out, like, you don't like her. The way that she's delivering some of her lines, she's like, I'm not interested in I'm not into bounty hunting. I serve a higher purpose. You're like, well, okay. Like, does this not matter? And like, but he's got the child. Child's gone. Whoa. Okay. Like, this is really cold compared to the last person that we met. So something must have clicked during this time, or you just caught her on a bad day or something. But she's not in the greatest of places is where I walked away from this. And then you have this whole fighting that ensues, and then, like, she basically like starts picking the fight with Boba Fett by saying, you mean your donor? Like, you didn't get that from your father, you got that from your donor. Like, she's picking a fight with him.
Yeah.
And so I got to thinking about what she said in that episode 3 again, where she's like talking about the zealots that have led Mando to become the Mandalorian that he is today, and how they're wrong. Well, I was like, you know what? You're kind of showing a bit of sign of zealot here too. Like, and it got me to stop and think, like, the Mandalorian way it's different by clan, and not every clan kind of has the same vision. Instead of embodying the totality of what it could be to be a Mandalorian, they're focused on individual facts of what it means to be a Mandalorian. So the armor is one piece of it, or the warrior aspect, and not really to emphasize. Then there's some that emphasize more like the peace aspect of it, and fighting for a purpose and things like that. So you just kind of see that at play, and see these kind of two clans clashing together. Was what I took from this scene. What did you take from it?
So I kind of bookend that scene with the very last scene where Mando tries to hand her the Darksaber.
Yeah.
And basically says, like, I don't want it. Like, you take it. Like, you came here. This is one of the things you wanted to get. Here, it's yours. Mm-hmm. And then Moff Gideon reminds Mando that, well, she can't just take it. She has to win it from you. And I think of how cold she was to everybody, picking on Boba Fett, sort of disregarding them and looking down her nose at them. And then that moment, this was something I really paid attention to. Like, the way that Katie Sackhoff plays it at the end, there's a lot of conflict in her face. Her wheels are turning. She's thinking through different ways to get to her ultimate goal there. And
which, real quick, the only reason she has established this, that she is on that ship, is for that blade.
For that, and it had to go a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go that way. It could still go down that way, meaning she could fight Mando for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's conflicted over two things, and I think it's more one than the other. I think one of them is I don't think she wants to fight Mando.
Oh, no.
Because of who he is, because he's a Mandalorian, because he takes this stuff seriously, and because he's sort of in the circle with them.
It's one thing to fight the Empire, to get it back and tell that story than to fight another Mandalorian
Yes.
to win it back.
But I think even more than that, I think she's calculating in her mind and she's saying to herself, oh, I don't know if I can win that one.
Maybe. I also don't know if in her mind it tells as good as a story. Can she really lead Mandalore if she defeats another Mandalorian for it?
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't he be the one to lead them?
I think that's part of the calculation too, because I think Moff Gideon even says like it's the story that has the power, and that's not as great a story. But I still think that on some level she would just kind of just chop his head off if she knew that it would all work out.
She wants it.
She wants it. Like she's like seething. I think Katie Sackhoff plays that so well because there's not a ton of dialogue. She's not moving around a whole lot, but you can see her blood is just boiling.
By the way, none of this is critical of her. None of what I'm saying is. None of it is critical of the character. I still love the character.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I'm just watching her have these moments and having this high and mightiness and then being humbled, really humbled by the end of this. Like, she's brought from a high place to a really low place really quick.
And I've thought about this a little bit since December and since we first saw this episode all that time ago. Like I wonder if like season 3 picks up in that room on that deck of that destroyer. The elevator goes down and then like do they all turn each other and like pull their guns and weapons on each other?
They're just like turn and look at each other like, so what do we do now?
Right.
I mean, they've got the ship. They can just go away and do whatever they want. And here's the other thing. If you can't do that anymore, because guess what? Cara Dune's not there anymore.
Yep. Right.
You can't start at that scene. You have to fast forward a little bit, but we're all going to be wondering what happened after that.
Right.
So
I wonder how they're going to handle that. I don't know, but
I don't know.
I've thought about that many times. I picture like season 3, the episode is, whatever, and, fill in the blank. And then it's just like elevator's gone, guns pulled, like, they all sort of like roll and tumble and hide behind like, like a computer terminal waiting.
Yeah.
And they're yelling over the computer terminals. Let's talk this out. Like, like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And somewhere in all this, Moff Gideon's just like, go at each other so that I can just move on with my life.
Yep. So yeah, I wonder what's going to happen there. But that, that you're going back to the scene that you were talking about where she's kind of picking on them, and there's a cool thing where they shoot the flamethrowers at each other and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, in my mind, I bookend that with like that really tense moment that is still unresolved to this day. I can't wait to see how they kind of resolve that situation.
Same, and where they go from here, and so one more thing that we'll talk about, and then we'll get to some of our closing points of this episode and or the questions that we have lingering going into season 3, I should say. But let's get to the main point first, which this episode did something that none of us expected, and it brought back Luke Skywalker. And I remember waking up that morning, like you mentioned, like didn't want to see all the spoilers, and in our Broaxium group chat that we've got going on, all the bro hosts are talking about the episode and stuff, and we have this thing where Chris says dude, the DOOOOOD, like, and so like,
and like more O's is a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. And this time it was like, how many times can I say dude? Because it was just so crazy. And they're all so nice to me because I'm usually the last one that sees it. Not spoiling anything in the group.
Yeah, people are good about that.
But that's what I woke up to, was just dude, and like couldn't understand. Like, they went there, they did it. And then I saw it that night. I'm like, oh my gosh, I know where this is going. Because as soon as I saw the X-wing, I was like, they're going with Luke. This is Luke. Who flies around solo in an X-wing? Who's that daring? Luke. That's it.
Yep.
Only person. So, but I love the reveal, the slow reveal. Even the music doesn't hint anything. That's what I picked up on this time. The music just kind of hints that he's special and something's going on, but you don't know what. It's mysterious sounding. And it, like you said, it's orchestral. It slowly kind of introduces
it becomes orchestral. At first it's like that droning guitar and like some more, modern Ludwig stuff.
And exactly. But it slowly transitions into Luke.
Yep. As he's revealed. Yeah. It's really nicely done. And I a few different shots that I love there. I love the shots of the camera looking at the screen on like one of the security terminals up on the bridge.
Oh yeah.
because it's a little bit grainy and you can't really tell, and that's part of like I think a really nice slow reveal that they did.
Yep.
You really can't see a whole lot. It's more of like moving shadows and things like that, and then you get a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more, and that's I think that one of the things that I loved right off the bat was like that weekend there was a million reaction videos on YouTube. People like brought to tears. And I still get goosebumps when I think about it. When you see the green saber and you realize what's happening, like it's a goosebumps kind of moment. But yeah, there was so much speculation leading up to that of like who's going to answer the call, if anyone, and who better to answer the call.
Well, and I think we all said it should be Luke, but it won't be.
But it won't be. How could it be?
How?
They won't do that.
Oh, they could use that technology that they used that one time in Rogue One. They did it on 2 characters there. What's to stop them from doing it again? We completely forgot about that. And they did a great job. So it's funny you say that, because then I just saw on Twitter again that you don't spend much time there. Just don't. There's a conversation of people going, so now that it's been a few months since that scene, what is everyone's reactions to it? Mine is less positive. And then I saw all these comments. It's like, oh, I don't like it anymore.
What?
I'm like, why?
What changed?
What? They're like, the CGI is terrible when you look at it. I'm like, okay, but it got you Luke back, so be quiet. Like, we got Luke back. We can't be happy about it. We can't have anything nice.
This is why we can't have nice things.
So I was surprised to see that. But my reaction again watching this is just getting excited at the reveal and noticing the details like the music this time, and just feeling like you got this great closure with Grogu's story. Like he finally has found a Jedi. He hasn't been with the Jedi for 30 years, 40 years. I'm not mathing very well today.
Ballpark, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's 23 years after Return of the Jedi.
Oh, be quiet. I thought you were just pulling my leg again, because I'm too used to that now. But it's been such a long time since he's been back with a Jedi, and he feels, as soon as he sees R2-D2, he feels like he's safe and he can do it.
I wanted to ask you about that too, because R2-D2 does. So I really tried to pay attention to this time, because people kind of mentioned it to me before. This is not something I originally spotted for myself, but R2 rolls in, kind of looks around, retracts his front tread, like his front leg, and then tips forward a little bit.
Look at him.
And looks at him and kind of has an excited reaction.
He is excited.
He rocks back and forth and beeps and whistles and stuff. I think, a lot of people have speculated that they knew one another, that they crossed paths, and that maybe R2 had something to do with saving Grogu from Order 66.
Maybe. I got to think about where he was during Order 66 again and all that. There's a good chance.
Or played some part in kind of his survival in between that event and, whenever he got onto whatever path that kept him safe for all those years.
And this is a theory that just sprouted into my head. So hold up, bear with me for a second. My theory is that there is a lesson learned from that whole experience, right? That this is a very special individual. It'll take a long time for their power to fully manifest itself, but when it does, just like Yoda, it has the possibilities of leading the galaxy and helping it to be reborn, and with the Jedi leading again. So it's really critical that he survives. Very critical. And I'm going to guess that Luke understands that, and for that reason protects him a little bit differently, and for that reason he is still alive at the time of 30 years later. They learned their lesson from when he was in the Jedi Academy, and when whatever happened with him, he was protected by R2, or however he survived that, right? They don't want to relive that or risk that again, and so they're going to take some different precautions this time. So he did not get destroyed at Luke's temple. That is my theory.
I like that.
Let's wait and see what actually happens.
Yeah.
But anyway.
You know what I worry about? I worry that it's going to go in a direction much like a lot of Yoda's story. So now we're getting a little bit more of Yoda's story because he's a character in the High Republic comics and books and stories. So we're getting a little bit of him from the Golden Age of the Jedi. But for the most part, most of Yoda's life will remain a mystery, I think.
Yep.
I think there's a lot that's kind of considered sacred, and we won't ever get to know very much about Yoda's upbringing and when he was a kid and whatever. I think the opposite's going to be kind of true with Grogu. we're going to get to know him a little bit when he was very young, and we're not going to know much more about his distant future. Like we're not going to know Grogu when he's 800.
Yeah.
And the impact he's having on the galaxy.
That's true.
I don't know if they'll ever give us that. Maybe they will.
It might be a while away. I mean,
It might be a while away, but
yeah.
that's one of the big questions I have about season 3.
Yep. Let's get into that now. So big questions going into season 3. What's your first one?
My first one is, building off of that, does season 3 in any way focus on Grogu, or is Grogu kind of out of sight with Luke for a big part of season 3, or all of season 3?
I mean, my thought is that he's done in The Mandalorian, and maybe we get him in some other way, or if he shows up, actually no, strike that. He is done in The Mandalorian, but he is going to show up one more time at least to hold true to Mandalorian's promise that he will see him again.
Okay.
So I do think he'll fulfill that promise. But otherwise, his story will be told in other ways. It's not done being told, though. It can't be. Like, they talk about Disney and the merchandising opportunity and how great it is. Like, people just... This is a moneymaker to have him there. Right? You invested so much in this character. People love him. People called this the Grogu show. Or the Baby Yoda show, I mean. So, you can't get rid of him. You have to find a way to bring him back in. But does it make sense anymore now that we've got such a satisfying ending in this? Probably not. Unless it's as a cameo.
That's my conflict too. Is you cleaned it up so nicely. It ended better than I could have imagined.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to mess with that. Is he wearing a different outfit when we see him again?
I don't think about that. Why are you thinking about that?
Does he have a cute little like green lightsaber?
Oh, maybe he's got a little. Yeah, let's hope for that.
Like a little pencil-sized lightsaber?
Mm-hmm. Let's hope for that. Chopsticks or something, you know? Oh, man. I hope so. Yeah.
I hope so, too. We'll see.
What other questions do I have from the next season? What's just going to be the plot? And not just the plot of Mandalorian, but the plot of Book of Boba Fett. That one I feel like they've kind of started a little bit more, and they said, all right, he's in the seat now, and like the whole world is our oyster, or whatever the saying is. Like, we can do so much with this now. So, lots to explore there. But what do you explore in The Mandalorian?
Yeah.
What's left? What do you do next? I think they're going to get more focused on The Mandalorian now. And not just the individual Mandalorian, the race of Mandalorian.
I think you're right, too. Because and you know, the Darksaber is now part of things, and we've seen...
Bo-Katan's part of that.
We've seen Mando run into other Mandalorians who don't fit his standards in some ways of what a Mandalorian should be, and that's caused him to reconsider. And I think, you know, from the beginning when he went back and picked up Grogu to this moment where he's dropped him off, I feel like a lot has fundamentally changed for him, and I think he kind of has to catch his breath and reconsider who he is.
Yeah.
And he's probably been asking himself questions all along the way, and like Mayfeld probes him a little bit and probably causes him to ask himself some questions. But now it's like, if he has a chance to catch his breath, I think he has to think a little bit about, all right, am I the guy who always keeps the helmet on? Is that really important? Or is being a Mandalorian something more internal and not an external signal to the outside world? Like, I think that there's going to be some inner conflict. But yeah, I think that the internal Mandalorian to Mandalorian conflict is going to be a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And then there's probably something, Noah and Favreau and Filoni, there's probably something that was a seed that was planted clearly in the season that will make a lot of sense as it blooms into a big conflict in this third season. Yeah,
that's a good point. There's some, I didn't really pick up on anything that I could say like, okay, they're going to, other than the conflict with Bo-Katan and the Darksaber, that they could keep going with, but we'll just wait and find out what it is that they do. But I do think it's going to be able to go and tell its own story. I do think, this is my one speculation of who we're going to see, Sabine Wren, I think is going to come in. Because she's a Mandalorian that's somewhere out there doing something, and maybe the events of... she might come into Ahsoka's story first or something like that, but there feels like there's a lot of stories being told around this same time, and And then I did read something today about how Favreau took a little bit of inspiration from Game of Thrones, which I have not seen, but apparently it talks about, or it has like all these different stories happening at once that sometimes cross paths and things like that. So, and you see that kind of unfolding. It's going to create all these other stories, but they're still going to kind of play together in the same sandbox occasionally. So maybe you'll see like Sabine get introduced over in Ahsoka and then come into the Mandalorian at some point. She is a Mandalorian. She should. And she's out there, so maybe that's what happens.
Okay, I like that.
Other than that, I just don't know. But I think this is going to focus more on the broader conflict of reuniting the Mandalorians, which makes up another question. Will we get the Armorer back finally?
Oh, yeah. I would love that.
I hope so.
I was a big fan of the Armorer. That would be really cool to get her back.
And that's one of the seeds I think they planted was the idea now is in Mandalorian's mind of, is this sect that brought me up a zealot sect? Like, am I what she says that I am or not? And she's going to have to reconcile this Armorer Bo-Katan conflict that's in his head. I'm done. You're looking at me like, okay.
I'm pondering. I'm taking it in. Yeah, it's really tough to say where they're going to go with it. And it could be one of those things where episode 1 of season 3, they establish the new conflict in a real clear way. And we go, oh, okay, cool.
Trailer 2, they will establish something. They have to hook us in the trailer to get us to all want to watch it.
Good call.
At least the ones that are casually watching it.
Good call.
They will shed some light as to what they're after in the second trailer. Just wait a few more months and we'll learn a little bit.
And also like you mentioned, the Book of Boba Fett is something that we will get this year. So we'll get the Book of Boba Fett in December, and that could set something up too.
I think we're going to get Cobb Vanth in that. That's my guess. Because if it's going to take place on Tatooine, there's going to be some conflicts with the residents, and that's maybe where Cobb Vanth comes back in.
Makes sense. But I think that perhaps in the course of that story, they might uncover something that becomes a conflict for the Mandalorian the next season.
Good point.
But one thing I'll say real quick about the Game of Thrones thing. So I didn't make it through the whole series, but I think one of the things that stuck in my mind was that it would just follow different people all the time, different families, different storylines, and so on, like Favreau said. I think the Mandalorian's always going to be about Din. I think it's always going to follow him.
It has to.
It's not going to abandon him to go follow the storyline of Bo-Katan for 3 episodes, and then come back to him. I think that's going to be one major difference. Yeah, you can have a big ensemble cast with a lot of different characters that cause different conflicts and have different dynamics.
And have their own stories play out elsewhere. Yeah.
But a lot of them are going to be secondary because Din is going to be the main character.
In his story.
His story.
So if Ahsoka comes into his story, she'll be secondary.
Right.
But if Mandalorian goes into her story, it's going to be Ahsoka's story.
Correct.
Whatever they decide to do.
I think that's spot on. Yeah.
That would be really cool to see them play these next few episodes or next few series out like that. Like, hey, all these different things are happening and everything. They're going to crisscross sometimes, but also remain in their own camps and solve their own individual conflicts. But sometimes those conflicts come to a head together.
Do you think they'll find any way to connect the High Republic to, like, will there be nods back to, like, will they say something about Starlight Beacon? Or like
maybe little ones like that. I wouldn't put that past them. But they haven't introduced any until they introduce something in live action. No.
Okay.
It's going to be Easter eggs. Usually that kind of stuff is like, hey, here's a little Easter egg for the super fans, but we know how everyone's going to pick this up, so we can't really make this a whole thing.
I love stuff like that.
Plus, it was so long ago.
Yep.
So, like, who was alive now that knows that, or in the time of the Mandalorian?
It would just be handed down. It would be like legend.
Yeah, exactly. So they might be able to do something. Well, let's wrap up.
Okay.
That was a fun episode. We could just talk forever, couldn't we?
Yeah, I just love The Mandalorian. I love revisiting it. I'm glad I took a little break because I could see it with fresh eyes, like I said. But man, it holds up for me. I think it's terrific stuff.
I couldn't agree more. So what are we going to be talking about next time?
Oh, we are going to be talking about our favorite lightsaber battles, our favorite lightsaber duels, lightsabers in general, and we're going to rank.
I'm so excited for this. So this is one of those when we started the podcast, I was like, I want to do this topic, but I want to wait until we have listeners that can listen to it. And now we have some more listeners, and so I'm really excited to talk about this.
Aren't all three of you excited?
It's more than that. And so excited to talk about this topic. And you got me a great book for my birthday last year.
Might have been your birthday.
About lightsabers. So I'll be pulling that back out and looking at it again. So cannot wait to talk about this one. Until then, we just want to say thank you again to all of our listeners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of the conversation with us and for listening. Thank you for tuning in and for sharing us with your friends. Hopefully you are. Share our channel, Bro Axiom, with them. You can find us on Twitter at Star Bros Podcast. You can email us at thestarbrospodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. Have I missed anything?
I think that's all the big ones. And definitely check out the Bro Axiom YouTube channel.
Yes, all the great stuff on there. The quick shots that cover the comics, and it's all good stuff. So make sure you check us all out and all the bro hosts there contributing to the wonderful world of Star Wars. What else have we got?
I think there's one more thing.
One more thing. Your turn.
My turn for the one more thing?
Oh, yeah.
It's a trap!
Wrong one. Not trap.
What do you mean?
It's a wrap.
It is a wrap. Let me try that again. It's a wrap! It went literal.